Well, I plugged us in and it cut us off. My bloody iPhone. Oh dear goddess. So here we go. Part 2 now. Continuing reading of my offerings from my old website. I begin with, this is of even date still, the 10th of January 2022. The time is currently 9:32 p.m. and I'm reading from, where did we get cut off? The Guru Files. And we got cut off just as I began the sentence. It was actually near the end of that particular story or piece of prose. So we continue, and I'm sorry about the interruption, people. It's very frustrating, I know. The source of love is eternal and will always attract the components of existence into its orbit. My love has been spilt on men who were not worthy, or gilded on those who loved me in return, but in all the good and bad experiences that my heart has laboured over, there is the knowledge that it had to be and will be yet again. And I wrote that in 2002. The Princess Searching. Not very long ago, in a faraway place, lived a princess longing to meet her prince. Well, I need a king to my queen, because I've upgraded since then, babies. I've also gotten a shit ton older, so I'm no longer a princess seeking a prince, but a queen, a warrior goddess queen, seeking a warrior god king who can match me in my energy signature and be a man to my woman, and I can be a woman to his man. And oh my goodness, I can't even imagine how wonderful that might be when this person finally enters my life for real this time, right? It's going to be amazing, because I won't settle for anything less than amazing, authentic, heart-centered and real. Well, I said that in authentic, loving and kind and ennobling. Someone who absolutely adores me and values me and cherishes me like my platonic friends. And doctor. So I continue on. Well, it didn't pan out that way as fairy tales tend to do. No, she pined herself into a frazzle of a wreck of a woman and went on a journey to find the one. The journey was long and arduous and fraught with dangers at every turn. She persisted though, because the alternative for her was loneliness and despair. So on and on she went, dragging her feet and keeping her nose pointed forward, seeking out her destiny. On the road, she met many shadow men, ones that promised her the world, but did not have the world to give, or couldn't even follow through on a fucking date, by the way. Not only could they not give me the world, they couldn't even give me the scraps of the world. You know who you are, babies. Dear goddess. So she sojourned with them for a while, each one bringing a lesson and a time of pleasure and pain. Many moons passed. I mean, I can laugh about it now. That's how you know I've healed, honey, when you can laugh about it. Many moons passed, and the time of her dreaming slowly came to the end. Her travails upon the road ceased, and the road became smooth, and her steps were firm upon the road. I've got to fix this pussycat, she's driving me mad. Why is she going crooked? Why are you going crooked, puss puss? Face the world front on. Paws up, head high. And she knew she had gained in wisdom along the way. So her heart once more beckoned to go home, and she followed her desire with all the remaining strength left in her. She gave up her traveller's rags and donned her robes of royalty once more. She no longer looked frazzled or despaired of being alone, for she had seen the real world and all its cruelties, yet hidden within it all of its beauty. How could she fail to find such joy in selfhood after the wonderful journey she had been on? What of the prince, you ask? Well, in time, all good things come. It is knowing how to recognize them when they are there. The shadow men were not the prince, but the princess no longer needed to feel she needed a prince to feel whole either. Female freedom fighter follows foolish heart. That's a weird fucking memory, that's why I'm smirking, people, but never mind. I was young and passionate once. Now I'm old and passionate. Nothing much changes. I walked on the beach, feeling sanctified and happy, the purifying sea soothing my feet and ankles, the salt spray in my hair and face, the healing, the joy of reveling in newfound freedom. The freedom from longing for love to turn the corners of my wizened heart and replenish it with new delights, new beginnings, new life, the life force of my soul. Drumming, rhythmic, flowing, convulsing, physical embodiment of spiritual energies, attuning, vibrating, building, convoluting, expressing, a yearning, a gathering in the fissures of my soul. I feel I am being summoned by whom I do not know. I sense the overwhelming emotion of love being sent to me in waves of time and space. I wait, patiently counting the ocean's rhythmic depths and orgasmic sighing that follows each crash onto the beach. When I finally returned to the car park in Byron Bay, I saw that someone has tried to call me on my mobile phone. I retrieved the message and discovered that it is the one who I have come here to find release from. I felt amazed and bewildered that his connection to me is so strong that in all the drumming on the beach and all the crashing of the waves and all the gentle whispering of the sea breezes caressing my lost and lonely face, there had been his voice, his yearning, searching for me, wanting me. My foolish vanity got the better of me. I drove home, and 2.5 hours later returned his phone call, left my kids and went to him for a night of passion and mystery. So much for freedom and release and embracing the newness of my life of independence. So much for all my higher ideals. A blink, a nod, a sigh, and I sold myself to the devil of love. And let's call it what it really was, lust. And that too ended up empty and sadistic and cruel. But those emotions were just fucking glorious at the time, so we'll smile and nod and shake my head and ding, move on from that, shall we? But that was written on the 17th of April 2002, which was 5 days after my 37th birthday. Happy birthday. The Tanya got lucky. She got 6, darlings. That was an unusual event even back then. Attack of the Zine Makers. Publications. You can see I'm very amused by all this because, you know, it's all right for you reading it when you don't have the same level of experiential awareness, but I actually lived through these things, people. So I'm greatly amused by it. Thank God I'm greatly amused by it. I used to be traumatized and used to cry and beat my breast and ask the gods why I've been denied true love all my life. Now I just laugh in the face of it and go, oh well, at least I got good sex at that point in time. Sex was pretty good with that one too. I won't say who it was because it's not important now. Long, long gone. And that connection started off very, very bad, very, very bad indeed. So there is that. Don't worry, I'm not in manic denial. I remember exactly how that all played out. But yeah, that psychic attuning to him in Byron Bay was astonishing, and made my foolish brain think that somehow it was meant to be, right? Ba-ba. No, it wasn't. But when you're young and full of hope and a bit of healthy lust, you get played for a fool very easily that way. Attack of the Zine Makers. Publications free or cheap, leaving a smoky aftertaste in the thought processes of the brain dead or cerebrum dying, starved of intellectual stimulation that the proletariat exemplify. Give us a cheap thrill or a sacrilegious satire. Turn our minds into more than grey papier-mâché pulp. Make our brain stems throb with excitement, titillation, and interest, or coax us into a state of enlightenment as opposed to the acknowledgement of the mundane. Ordinariness, contrariness, homelessness, classless, ovoidless, essence, essential, esteemed, estranged, estrogen. testosterone, preposterous prose, polite polemical poetry, zine masters unite in obscurity and perpetuity, light, darkness, divulgent blends of shadows and speckled light, grey and lovely and lonely in the kaleidoscope of my awareness. Open oneself to the imagination of the spirit and the flawlessness of the eternal muse, the creative nature that rebuilds and procreates anew, like the serpent that swallows its own tail. The external juxtaposition of life and spirituality, health and disease, knowledge and ignorance. Written on the 5th of September 2002. Burnt out ends of smoky days. Feeling horny, I sat on the floor and thought about all the things that I used to adore. Sunsets on smoky hot days in Brisbane City, purple, pink chartreuse, colours that even I found hard to describe, but nevertheless, there they were, effulgent in the horizon. Sunsets for the broken-hearted brought me a kind of comfort in knowing that, just as the sun will set, it will also rise again. Just as I have loved and lost, I will heal and blossom out again in love with someone else one day. Maybe someone who returns my love with equal passion and admiration, and especially respect and even maybe friendship. Feeling horny, sitting on the floor, wishing I had someone to share my excess hormones with. Someone who would understand my predicament and would like to help me out. A simple fuck for a simple girl. Who knew I would ever get like this? To miss the intimacy of a kiss, a caress, a look in the eye. I sit and ponder, why? I've had the best and been torn apart by the fallacy, spelt P-H-A-L-L-A-C-Y, punning on the word phallus. Torn apart by the fallacy of their lies, their need to move on, leaving me behind with the rumpled sheets and cast-off underwear. Why do I miss this most bestial, most lonely of relationships, that between a man and a woman? Aren't my pets more faithful, more loyal? What possible good is a man to me right now? They've only ever used and betrayed me, soiled and despoiled me. Where is the love I was promised by the mythology of my youth? Where is the union of bliss that is shared between true lovers? I have tasted the ambrosia of the gods and lusted after the ecstasy of understanding true union, only to be cast aside like the afternoon shadows, left with a distant memory of a touch, a yearning, and an aroma. Feeling horny, sitting on the floor, I think about letting go of this life and all its miseries, the regrets, the humiliations of it all, but I cannot. I have loved too well and wisely know that although they have gone and left me feeling hollow and frustrated, there will always be another means to fulfill me. I will reclaim my inner innocence, my sense of wonder and mystery. A sunset before dying. A million sunsets will not negate the pain I have felt and the losses I have suffered. But each one will fill me with a beauty unimaginable and a promise of a future unexpressible. Another and another sunset will bid me goodbye, and in the morning I will awaken late and go about my day with the knowledge that a miracle will occur with or without my help, even if I do not notice. 1,000 days and an eternity of living will not take away who I am, who I have been, and whom I may yet become. A warm and welcome comfort for my weary and worrisome soul. Written on 9th of September 2002. And the miracle of opening up again to love is happening now. In fact, I have witnessed it since after Beauregard's death on the 1st of August 2023, which was utterly horrific, and I had to bury him alone at sunset on a night when there was the most spectacular sunset just after his death and a rising full moon. It was the opening of the gates to Valhalla for my beautiful dog, beautiful soul that he was. It was astonishing, people, and I knew he had been accepted into heaven at that moment in time. And I drove out of the car park from that vet after witnessing that amazing sunset and full moon, weeping in great distress and trauma with my dead dog beside me on the passenger seat, and got tailgated all the way from the Gaza Road exit to Logan Road by some fucking maniac who was just a sadistic monster. It was so tempting for me to just slam my brakes and let him slam into me and get out and beat him to death with my dead dog. That's the emotions that was coming up in me, right? But no, I'm a respectable, decent, honourable woman and law-abiding citizen yet again. So I continued that drive and got us, my dead dog and me, safely home. Drove into my driveway and fucking hit the ground running to bury him in darkness, alone, unassisted. But I put on my Spotify soundtrack and I cried and I wailed and I sang and I dug that grave for my beautiful boy, and I did that task alone and unassisted yet again, which is my duty as, a pet owner anyway. And no regrets. I gave him the best goodbye I could possibly give him under the circumstances when I was deeply, deeply traumatised by the actions of those awful vets. And the miracle that happened was, in recent months, I have been shown the most astonishing, beautiful agape, unconditional, even romantic love that can't be acted on because of the situation. But I was blessed with so much love from so many of my platonic male friends, and also from, women friends, and my beautiful doctor fighting for me to be able to see a urologist who I have to get up early in the morning to see tomorrow. So I have to go to bed soon so I can be alert and functioning to get there by 9 a.m, right? So, yeah. How many more stories have I got to go? Fair few more. Crikey. There's a lot. And I'll continue a little bit longer. It's now it's 9:58 p.m. As long as I'm in bed by 11, I should be all right to function tomorrow, provided I actually sleep, because sometimes I get so anxious before I have an appointment the next day that I don't actually sleep, which is annoying, people, but I do this. So, where were we? I'll carry on with a few more, and then I'll probably have to make another video to finish off the rest of the website. But anyway, Mr. Magoo. Once I knew a man in the biblical sense who made my neurons go zing-a-zing-zing, wackadoo, Mr. Magoo. In a chemical sense, he was my physical complement, yummo and wacko. Pity he was not my spiritual compadre. He was just not on my wavelength. He had to play around to sort out all his energies. Mine were twanging out to the universe for a while, singing a strange cosmic song. In a way, I miss him. He made me feel things on a different level to anything I've felt before. Not necessarily things that were good for me to feel. Maybe he was an alien, sparked up my electromagnetic ectoplasm and discharged me out into space where it was safe for me to explode like a firecracker. Unfortunately for him, I was only a human girl looking for love and a little excitement, needing commitment to really spark and fizzle and glow. Sigh. You get that. 9th of September 2002. The violin case escapade. This is based on actual events, people. Once I was given an old battered violin case. I've given it to my daughter since, which I kind of regret now, because it was a freaking awesome case. I had always wanted to learn the violin, but being neither mathematical nor musical, I had demurred. So having a violin case in my possession gave me an artificial feeling of being musical and cool and arty in a far out way. So I was quite fond of this violin case. I painted it and decoupaged it with weird pictures that I'd gleaned from the art gallery catalogues, etc. I glued some photos of my kids discreetly hidden in it and a calligraphic initial to make it a really personal art piece. I was so proud of it. I still am. It was a lovely piece. But, my daughter, I gave it to my daughter because it had little photos of her and Jasmine when they were little, and I thought it was a nice touch. One day, I decided to put my tarot cards in it and go to my old shop, which was operated by my ex-husband, and have a meal there with my kids. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, since I technically still owned the shop and was entitled to meals each week. So I sat outside and waited for our meals to be prepared by my staff. I opened the violin case and took out my tarot cards and shuffled them and did a quick spread. I didn't like what I saw. It was a messy, ugly divorce, so I put the cards back. I had created quite a stir. This is how stupid they were, by the way. My ex-husband thought I'd brought in a gun in my violin case, since he obviously thought of me as some kind of gangster guru, Machiavellian and thuggish. I fucking wish. Interesting, since he was the one committing fraud and running my business, and therefore the money from my house, etc., into the ground, driving me into abject poverty, and our children, by the way. Maybe if I'd known that for certain at the time, I would have found myself a weapon, but I don't think tarot cards really class as a dangerous weapon, except to a fool like the man I'd married. So I looked up to see the looks of horror on his face and the faces of his so-called freeloading friends and associates who also happened to be there and whom I had chosen to ignore. They were only eating my livelihood and profits, but live and let live. They would find out one day what a lowlife my ex really was. So I'd simply got on with my reading and my dinner. It was almost comical to see the fear, distrust and loathing in their eyes. I'd had a wonderful public relations expert in my husband. He'd done a terrific job of convincing everyone, including himself, that I was a homicidal maniac. What a lovely sounding word. homicidal, homicidal maniac. So much more satisfying than suicidal loser. How easy it would have been to fall into the trap of killing or be killed. How delicious the sense of gratification to have got one in before the bastards got me. But I really am a lovely, decent girl. Well, woman actually. Was a woman then. Sure, I get angry, real angry. Who wouldn't with the PR rap I'd been given by a vicious, pathetic, money-grubbing man? But it's not worth languishing in prison for. No man is going to steal my freedom. Not in marriage, not in divorce, not in life, and certainly not in death. Let them rot, I say. I will triumph. I will overcome. So I got up from the table noticing the nymphomaniac that hoped to steal from the devastation of my life by sucking the corpse of my marriage and fucking the Neanderthal. I almost felt pity for her. After all, I thought, she'd get everything I walked away from, but my God, she'd have to earn it. It came to pass that she took him to the Industrial Relations Tribunal for incorrect wages. So you see, there is divine retribution in everything. Who needs a loaded pistol in a decorated violin case? I think Neanderthal man called the police. It would have sounded rather trite. Ex-husband, Sergeant, my wife is trying to kill me. Sergeant, what gives you that idea? Ex-husband, well, she visits the shop and eats dinner and is totally unintimidated by my hostile, leering friends and paranoid staff, and she brings a violin case, and I thought she had a gun in it, but she carries her tarot cards in it. But you never know when she might actually bring it in with a gun or some other weapon tucked away inside, so I'm afraid of her. Sergeant, you need a life. Go and see a doctor and stop wasting my time. In the meantime, we'll keep a record of your complaint on file so we can laugh at you in our coffee and donut break. Unfortunately, some moron took him rather too seriously, because shortly after that, he slapped a restraining order on me. How demeaning for sweet little me. Well, the court registrar had the good sense to laugh when I came in to receive some paperwork and declared myself to be the defendant. They had a good time at my expense, but when you think about it, my ex is 6'3" tall and I am 5'3". Quite a difference in might versus right, don't you think? What a whining crybaby bully he really was. I suppose there is nothing more threatening in this alpha male-dominated world, apart from a beta male, than a woman who refuses to be afraid and refuses to give up on her human rights. Sad but true. So girls, if you think you're being punished for leaving a bad relationship, for having the guts and determination to start a new life for yourself and your children, then you probably are. Don't worry. Time heals all wounds. May you live long enough to see your lousy exes get what they really wanted in life and then not know how to handle it. For me, the ultimate revenge was seeing my ex marry a woman who treated him as shabbily as he treated me, and see him dependent on her financially. It really is a beautiful world if you have the patience and the cunning to wait long enough to see how justice always prevails, one way or the other. Sure, he got all the money, but I got something much more precious: freedom and self-esteem. Written on 14th of September 2002. And now we have the purple pube prank. Once there was a new age, almost middle-aged, wannabe hippie. Well, maybe her kids thought she was a wannabe hippie, but I reckon she really was one. All the time she'd played the role of straight-laced, middle-class, conservative, mother, ex-wife, friend, lover. She'd felt like her soul was in an old-fashioned Playtex girdle, all strangled in the middle, with her flesh squishing out the extremities. How comfortable would you be? So she shed her excess baggage and the latex layers of old skin. She became a bit more creatively coordinated. Dress conservative so you can get a job, said one friend. All she could think was, why? Why bury your identity to get and keep a job? She wasn't that weird. What the hell? She dreamed of growing dreadlocks, becoming really feral in a clean way. She dreamed of living an alternative lifestyle, far away from her so-called success-oriented peers. She wanted her freedom, an expensive experience for a one-woman, two-children family of impoverished gypsy-like wanderers. Kicked from 8 homes we were, so we weren't wanderers by choice either. One day she met a conservative man, a very dark man, a culturally different man, a weirdly enamored man. He rocked her world. He didn't like hippies. He didn't like a free woman either. It threatened him. So after an afternoon of passion, she drove him to work, went home and dyed her pubic hair purple. She was a wild-eyed, purple pubic people-eater. That's what it's all about. Dum-da-dum, biddy-bum, oh yeah. She felt rather wild and exotic, outrageous even. Then she realised the dye didn't take too well, and she looked more like the geriatric blue rinse brigade, only upside down, of course. Very surreal. Like she couldn't even succeed at being wildly provocative and outrageous. She shelved the special dreadlock wax. After all, she needed someone to dread it for her, as it would definitely be a 2-person job. Her accessory to the fact of her desire for weirdness balked at the idea in the end. Probably terrified she would change her mind and go berserk when she realised how weird and feral and dysfunctional, or should we say functionally fashion nonconformist, she really looked. With respect to her fear of being really different for the first time in her life, claiming her right to individuality and all that jazz, he was probably right. Still, she felt frustrated in her plans to achieve uniqueness. She thought about getting a tattoo, but it was against her religion. Got there in the end though, didn't I? More repression for the masses. But then a conformist needs to conform to something to anchor them to the ground. Old conditioning is hard to break, but a burial for a Jewish renegade is still a Jewish burial. A tattoo. Still a tattoo. She could plead insanity, of course, write it in her will. I was temporarily insane with the desire for primitive and extroverted expressions of freedom, so this tattoo should not prevent me from having a sacred burial. After all, my temporary insanity only lasted most of my adult life, so why burden the soul with more sorrows? A tattoo is only a doodle scratched on flesh after all. It is no more permanent than the living flesh of the living person, and now I'm dead. Who cares what weird and wonderful things I might have had inserted into it? I wonder if the rabbinate will see the common sense of it. Then, after the desire for a tattoo came, this was long before I got my tattoo, by the way, like 2 decades before. Then after the desire for a tattoo came, actually no, was it 2 decades? 12 years before, something like 10 years before, something like that. Then after the desire for a tattoo came, slowly creeping and insidiously overwhelming, the desire to grow her own marijuana in her laundry and perhaps dry it and smoke it in the event of an emotional emergency, like when she needed to chill out from the stress of 2 teenage daughters almost killing each other on a daily basis. Then, of course, she would acquire a drug habit that would need to be satiated on a daily basis. So she hesitated. A drug addiction, on top of all her other problems, was not a particularly good expression of independence. In fact, it would involve dependence on a substance she could not afford and not trust unless she grew her own. She had never smoked marijuana anyway, apart from the passive inhaling it from my friends, my numerous friends when I was a teenager that all smoked it. So it was hard to understand the hankering after something she probably wouldn't like anyway, and probably would never miss. She was too old to be acting like an experimenting teenager. What was wrong with her? Maybe the thought of impending middle age, menopause, and compounded effects of sleep apnea, etc., were taking over her mind, body, soul. Sometimes she felt as though she were dying. She was afraid to miss out on all the good things in life. After all, her life had been dedicated to trying to raise 2 children on her own with no family support and no money, driven from house to house and often in a constant state of despair over ex-lovers or ex-families' evil machinations. It was time she had a little bit of fun, lived a little, let her hair down, even if it still cried out to be purple from time to time, blew off the cobwebs. Well, okay, this is not about soft porn. We mean blew off, took off, travelled, saw new places, met new people, had new experiences, chilled out, regrouped, reconfigured, recognised herself in the buzz and hum of society's depressed and repressive mores. Well, maybe later, when 12th of September 2002. So when did I get my tattoo? In May 2012. So it took a decade. It wasn't 20 years. It took a decade to finally get my tattoo. But I did get my dreadlocks not long after I wrote that story. I was determined to have my dreadlocks. They came about in 2003, and Jared did actually do them for me. Thank you, Jared. That was a turning point in my life when I was reclaiming my individuality. My Viking funeral. Make me a boat to lay me down in for my final journey into the void of reason and the dawn of enlightenment. Let those who knew me and loved me the most each carve a design of homage to my life and loves. Let the greatest artists among my friends and peers create the most intricate design, and the simplest of you create whatever you can achieve, be it only your own initials, to show you remember me. I actually would still love that, you know. That is my one fantasy about my dying, my death, which comes to us all eventually. So I really did want a Viking funeral. Really seriously wanted it. Keep a template of the design you choose for my funeral, as the boat will burn with a magnificent blaze, taking all your dreams and visions of me with it. Cry not, but rejoice in my release into the welcoming light of the discovery of the next dimension. I shall rejoice with you, my friends and fellow travellers, on this ship of human existence. Written October 2002. Happiness. Time passed on and the feeling of displacement hit her square on the jaw. She lay down on her bed and contemplated the meaning of the universe, the tests that she had been given, and whether or not she had passed or failed. It was difficult to decide which way the coin had fallen. She lay still, warm and comforted in her bed, and knew that she must have made some right choices, or she could not be here, snuggled so safe and sound at last. An unknown feeling crept into the edges of her psyche, and before she knew it, spread like melting butter all through her mind and body. Happiness. It was an alien sensation, and she still wasn't quite prepared to deal with it. Happiness, joy, and contentment flowing through her veins, inside her very life force. The shock of it soon followed. If she were to be happy, what must she release? What payoffs did letting go of pain have? But she decided to stay in the moment and go with the sensation rather than fight it, as it was happiness, well deserved and hard won. The moment soon passed, but left her invigorated with hope and positivity once again. She might experience that feeling more often. It might visit with her again, and she might even learn to contain it somehow, make it stay more permanently within, and conquer any vestiges of despair, disappointment, and depression that she had cloaked herself in for so long, so long. She was tired and worn out from her constant battles in previous months. She still reacted strongly to triggers such as seeing doppelgangers of her ex-boyfriends, which filled her with fear. So far, they had only been false alarms, but she lived in fear of what might happen if she accidentally bumped into either of them. It was an irrational fear based on the damage done to her emotionally by being embroiled in a long-standing battle with her family and ex-boyfriends. Even though she had long ago escaped them, she was still on constant alert and felt constantly threatened by them, whether she heard of them or saw them anywhere or not. Written on 6th of June 2004. The Island of Tears. There came a time, and not so long ago, when the fantasies lived out in the Purple Pew prank story actually came to be. Who would have thought the middle-aged hippie finally rebelled and got her dreadlocks? The catalyst was that some women at her shul had a go about her hairstyle. So she decided, to hell with it. If they don't like the way I wear my hair, I'll go the whole hog and really give them something to freak out about. Anyway, the time had come to integrate her exterior weirdness with her interior weirdness. It felt good too, and it had another side effect. She'd been invited for coffee by a mutual friend of hers and an ex-lover. So she wanted to shock him out of ever thinking she would take him back. He'd once told her, after he saw her belly piercing, that if she ever got dreadlocks, that he'd never speak to her again. I mean, how fucking childish was he anyway? Like, what a fucking twat. But never mind, I continue. She wanted to make sure of that. So she asked her best friend Jared to dread her hair. That was an event in and of itself. Jared spent the entire day backcombing her hair in preparation for the coffee evening. His arms ached and he was quite exhausted after spending the whole day doing her hair. But he did it. To you, my beautiful Jared. The things you did to help me maintain my authority and my integrity and my beauty and my wildness and integrate after all that trauma. That was a beautiful gift you did for me, my darling. Always remember, I am grateful and appreciative of the journey we've been on together. Her hair was really wild and stood, I have to do it this way, it stood on end. The dreadlocks stood on end. It looked really crazy in the afternoon when another friend, my beautiful Lynn, saw the not quite finished dreads and freaked out. So she knew she was onto something. Jared ended up getting quite hysterical. Every time he looked at her, he burst into peals of laughter. That's how bad they looked the first day, even the first month or two. But she was determined. She went to the Three Monkeys, which used to be at West End, dressed flamboyantly and dreadful. The ex-lover was so shocked he didn't speak to her at all. No great loss there. The mutual friend took it all very well and made no comment on her appearance. They drank their coffees, and another friend from Shaw, Ron, who was invited also, talked with her animatedly. His only reaction upon seeing her dreads was a deep crimson blush. The ex-lover got quite jealous, or so she thought, as he kept watching her chatting with Ron. They discussed sanding down of tables, a project she was working on at the time. Ron promised to lend her an orbital sander, and in fact he didn't lend it to me, he gave it to me. But here's the table that I was working on at that time. And thank you, Ron, for facilitating this beautiful table, which I still use all these years later, 21 years later. In fact, I've had to sand it back and revarnish it. I think it was last year or the year before, because the varnish went tacky and sticky, so I had to redo it. But it still looks lovely, and I'm very proud of it. Anyway, I continue, the coffee evening went off rather well, and she felt triumphant and light-headed. She even got a really big mug for her hot chocolate, whilst the other two women got small cups. She was spoilt just because of her dreads. Cool. Well, she was so certain that she had got the ex out of her life forever. So some months later, it was a huge shock that the friend, I've named her in the actual story, but I'm not going to repeat her name for YouTube because it's not important now. You know, it was a trashy thing that they did to me actually, but it was borderline, and it was trashy, and it was toxic. But you know, I was in manic denial, and so were they apparently. So name redacted, the friend name redacted, not the same name redacted one from my other experiences that came many, many years later, more trash, but this one was particularly awful. Invited her, meaning me, to Russell Island for a rest. She had been through some major trauma with her mother again after 3 years of no contact, and she was in the middle of a nervous breakdown. So she, this is me by the way, agreed to go to the island. Dear fucking goddess. At no time did name redacted tell her that the ex-lover would be there. So it was a shock to find him waiting at the ferry with name redacted. She didn't want to make a scene, which was a mistake on my part. I should have made the most almighty scene, but I was in denial. And she was curious enough to see if they could be friends again, that she decided to go along with them. Big mistake. She spent the first day under control and was civil and friendly towards the ex-lover. She thought, well, more people were coming tomorrow. I was lied to and told that there were a whole lot of other people invited, and that the house where we were staying was going to be a house party with lots of interesting people, which I was actually looking forward to be honest. She thought, well, more people are coming tomorrow, so that will be a distraction. She won't have to spend so much time with him and name redacted alone. But the next day, the others didn't arrive, and so she began to unravel emotionally. I really wasn't well and should not have been in that situation at all. It was just insane, all of it. She tried hard to control herself, to be adult, mature, and handle her emotions. It was like being tortured, people. It really was. By that evening, she was openly crying. Name Redacted told the ex-lover that she was on the island for healing, and this was part of the healing process. Bullshit it was. The whole holiday was weird and spiritual, compounded by the fact that when Name Redacted and Name Redacted, friend and ex-lover, and herself went to hire videos, well, a young, good-looking man came into the video shop and approached her, meaning me. He told her how gorgeous she looked with the dreads and struck up a conversation with her about Byron Bay. She was so flattered and impressed, she felt like running away with him until she saw his car outside was full of yobbos. Otherwise, she might have done it. Anyway, the ex-lover looked suitably amazed, and it was the universe's way of once again showing him that other men might find her attractive and approach her, might love her even. The next morning, she and the ex-lover, this was day 3, mind you, I lasted 3 days, got into a fight. She got to tell him that he had only lied to her and cheated with her, and he had not even been honest about himself and who he really was, so he had no business trying to form relationships with women. Then she told Name Redacted that she wanted to leave the island. So then the weirdest thing of all, they both decided to see her off at the island ferry. They had to wait ages for the lunch break to be over so the ferry would resume service. Tweedledee and Tweedledum made, I just named them that because I got sick of saying Name Redacted, but you know who I'm speaking of here, the ex-lover and the former friend, made idle chatter. He actually made an effort to be friendly. A goodbye gesture. I don't know what that was about. It was insane, the whole thing. If I made a movie about it and someone else was presented to you as a movie and you were watching it all played out, you'd be watching going, what the fuck is going on in this? This is the weirdest movie I've ever seen. Except it was my actual real life people. For fuck's sake. She shook his hand. Nobility under fire, people. Remember that. But didn't make eye contact and got on the ferry and looked away from both of them. That's how disgusted I was with both of them. After a long while, looking in the opposite direction, ignoring them but seeing them in the reflection in the glass on the ferry, right? She realised they were both waiting for the ferry to leave and were watching her. Like, what the actual fuck was that? So she waved again with her heart in her mouth and feeling very strange. She had a sudden mad thought that she should just jump off the back of the ferry and swim to the mainland, but resisted the impulse. It was a hell of a long swim in shark-infested waters, and she'd never make it. She resigned herself to the fact that the love affair was well and truly over, and she had done well to stay as long as she did, had tried hard to resuscitate at least friendship. I don't even know what that was about. My pride, I guess. Fuck. It's just unnatural being put in that situation by the former friend. She felt certain that name redacted had intended exactly that and was misguided enough not to trust her judgment. At least she had got to say what was on her mind to inform him why she was so hurt. She got to say goodbye. In other words, I got closure. In the most sadistic, awful way. But it is what it is, babies. The dreads stayed for a few more months until they started growing out of her scalp, all straight and lank and crazy looking. She decided to cut them off. One thing for certain, that 6 months she wore dreadlocks was the best and worst of times for her. She felt really integrated and liberated. She had never been treated so well and found so many people so friendly and outgoing towards her as when she had worn dreads. She would always have happy memories of her dread phase. A few days after she got her dreads, she went and got her nose pierced. She also bought some cherry red Doc Martens in a second-hand shop, which were brand new and only $65. So she had the whole grunge look and felt really fantastic and cool. Some of her daughter's friends saw her new look and unanimously agreed that she was cool. So 2003, I was 37 when I did all this. Oh no, or was I 38? 65 to 2003. 38 I was. Yeah, that's right. So she felt really uplifted and excited about her new change of direction. By the time the dreads had grown out and she had resigned herself to get rid of them, she had already been through so many emotional changes that she was ready for anything the future might bring her. She still battled depression on and off again, but she felt stronger now than ever, safe and secure in her home, and with a newfound mental clarity that meant she coped with life better. During the dread period, she finished sanding down her computer table and a staff, so she went through a creative phase as well. Unfortunately, she didn't continue with the creativity, but she achieved something at least. And that was written on the 17th of June 2004, but I got my dreads in 2000. Those events actually happened in 2003, so it had taken me a while to kind of process it all and put it into writing. Anyway, the next story is called An Authentic Life, but I'm going to end it here because I'm tired and I've got to see my urologist tomorrow, and so I've got to conserve my energies and make sure I sleep tonight. It's now 10:45 p.m. So I bid you good night and adieu, adieu, adieu. And now you know why I am the way I am today, people, and why I get thoroughly disgusted when I get trickster men tune me up on the internet or in real world, play sick, perverted, sadistic games with my heart, mind and body and spirit, because I've been there many times before and I'm wanting to get off that groove and have my true love partnership manifest in 3D reality in my life for real this time. I don't have time for any more dickhead, nasty, pathetic schoolboy pranks or vicious little games. Only real men with real heart, real spirit, real soul can apply to be my partner in life. From this moment forward, that is my prayer, my affirmation, my manifestation, and my magic spell, my darlings. Ask for what you want in life and expect to receive, and allow nothing less than the truest, deepest, most honouring love. Bye for now, my darlings. Have a beautiful day, morning, night, afternoon in the space-time continuum. And remember, never ever let the bastards grind you down, and keep your heart and mind clear and clean and open to all potentiates manifested across all echelons and paradigms of time and space, because my man is coming to me sooner than I might expect, and he will prove to me by heartfelt actions, words, emotions and intentions that he is my man, and we can begin our life together in real world, in this time, in this space. Hopefully sometime this year would be nice, but I've waited eons, so it's in the lap of the gods as to whom they bring me that is worthy of my heart and my spirit and my soul and my journey on this planet Earth. Only the gods can know. I have a few little inklings, but unfortunately, those can't be acted on. So I'm sad, but I'm realistic. The right man for me has to, unfortunately or fortunately for him, be single. I want a requited, joyful, delicious, heartfelt love this time. Something that is exclusively mine, and beautiful and noble and blessed. But my platonic friends, I will always love you, and you will always love me, because you've been my friends for a long time. And that love is just as potent and important and precious as any sexual partner might be. Because historically, my sexual partners have always let me down badly, which is why I'm terrified of even forming new relationships of a sexual nature with men. And if you've been paying attention, you'll completely comprehend why. Anyway, on that note, goodbye and God's bless. Take good care. Stay in love with each other and our planet Earth and our ancestors that love us and our families and friends and our communities and tribes. Hold everything together that can be held together, and what does not serve you or is not kind or honouring, let those entities go. Bye for now.